very much.
You're very welcome.
That was Noah Copeland for us this evening. Now to a conversation 20 years in the making. Sonic Roboblast is one of the preeminent fan game franchises that has survived almost as long as Sonic himself has. Born from a single-scene click-and-play platformer, Sonic Roboblast 2 became the first 3D Sonic platformer using the Doom engine and the first to support online multiplayer. Today, with so many modern tools in use, its developers still use Doom for updates. Original series developers AJ Freda, Johnny Wallbank, Rod Tisdale, and Logan Arias spoke to me earlier this week about their combined decades of effort toward SRB2. And joining us to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Sonic Roboblast is a cavalcade of talent who have been part of it for all of this time. We have AJ Freda, we have Rob Tisdale, we have Logan Arias, and on audio, we have Johnny Wallbank, who created the original Sonic Roboblast. Gentlemen, it's good to have you here with us on TSSZ.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So let's first start with kind of the big reveal is that there will be a new version 2.2 of Sonic Roboblast, and we're actually looking at it on the screen now. I know, it's still very early in development, and features are going to be worked out and things like that. But I guess, I'll start with anybody who wants to just talk about, I guess, AJ, I'll start with you. Did you, in your wildest dreams, think that this fan game would still be in active development in updates 20 years after you started it?
From when I started it, no. I'd say maybe about 5-7 years in, I started seeing, a lot of the people being able to take things and, make their own mods for it and kind of carry, it started carrying itself, and seeing a lot of the other people starting to get involved, such as Logan. I think you came in around that time. Then I started thinking I could probably pass this off, when I'm ready to be done with it, and still see it being carried on into the future. How far, I didn't know. I had no idea.
I mean, 20 years is a long time, and I think it has to be the record for the most, continuously updated. It's definitely Sonic fan game, and possibly fan game, ever. I can't think of one off the top of my head that, that really eclipses this. We're actually looking on the screen now at the original Halloween mod from the late 90s, which is really a thing of beauty to see from between...
mate.
That's when I first started learning C and using Notepad.
And so let's go a little bit with sort of the meat and potatoes of Sonic Roboblast 2, which is, it's a Doom mod, basically. And, at the time, the tool set was very limited. You either had click and play, the Games Factory, or you edited Doom. And I wonder, AJ, why'd you choose Doom?
Well, click and play. Well, you can play the original Sonic Roboblast. See kind of the problems with that Johnny had with that, with the killing dead bug and other things. It hadn't come to a point where people developed, a library like Sonic Worlds where you could, build upon that in click and play. Static programming, I think, is what they used to call it. We just used the regular platformer mode that was built into click and play, and that inherently had a lot of limitations to it, and there really weren't any other options. So it's like, hey, I've done Doom mods before. I made Sonic Doom 2, and that seemed to go pretty well. So I figured, why not do it for this too?
There was an attempt to do SRB2 within Games Factory at the time, which had many of the problems you were saying. I think the engine was infinitely, well, quote unquote, engine was infinitely superior to what was there in Sonic Roboblast 1, but that's not a particularly difficult feat. But yeah, moving to Doom sort of immediately fixed a lot of those problems, and hey, it was quite a lot of fun. we both enjoyed Doom, making levels within Doom. So yeah.
It's funny, Johnny, because I remember playing the original demo of Sonic Roboblast 2 on the Games Factory version, and I couldn't find video of it for this. I could only find the Doom versions, and the only other thing I could find was the original Sonic Roboblast, which is still a thing, and there are still a couple of Let's Plays about that, and we actually have that on the screen now.
Oh, God. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to your viewers? What did they do to deserve this?
No, you didn't do anything but it's an interesting evolution between what is effectively click and play, where you really only had one scene at a time, you couldn't do any scrolling, you couldn't do anything like that, and something like Doom, which basically made the first really true 3D Sonic fan game, and still one of the few in existence today. Certainly a lot of others have tried, but this is really the only complete one. I wonder, Johnny, if you had... It sounds like going to Doom from your perspective as the original sort of project head on this series. It sounds like Doom was sort of the way to go for you. Did you, at any point, did you and AJ either consider, I don't know, Quake or anything like that at the time?
I think we were mostly set on Doom for the fact that it was sprite-based, and neither of us were much up to 3D modelling. And again, we both had familiarity with the whole WAD system, and in terms of making levels, so that felt like a better starting point than either creating our own engine or the alternatives Game Factory and Click and Play.
So now to Logan and to Rob. I mean, you guys are really kind of bringing this project together in the present. What's it like working with Doom, especially now when you have so many other tools available to you, particularly like Unity and those other sort of kits?
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because I don't have experience working in those other things. This is the game I work on developing for fun as a hobby. I don't know what it's like to work with Unity or other game engines, so I'm just used to it. And I think most of the development team at this point is just kind of used to working with Doom tools as opposed to anything else. It's just what we do.
And it's that familiarity that can help you be really good at adding new features and adding new, little nuances with each passing version, I imagine.
Oh, sure. Like, very recently, one of the community members updated the newest version of Doom Builder to support, Sonic Roboblast 2. And once they did that, we were able to, get into a whole level of depth on intricacies of map building that I won't go into here, but, like, just a certain level of being able to optimize maps for playability and for, functionality. It's huge. We are so used to it at this point. Like I said, we're down to dealing with minute details I don't think people realize the Doom engine has going for it.
Interesting. And I certainly, I don't do a lot of coding, myself. The best I get lately is like Visual Basic, VB Script, things like that, which is still, compared to a lot of the other things out there, still very simple and archaic, but can still be very powerful. So in that respect, I kind of get it.
Yeah, Tristan, I would say too that one of the things that I think has contributed to its success is avoiding, I guess you would call it, engine creep. Because over the years, ever since we first started, people were saying, "Oh, well, why don't you use Quake instead?" Or, "Oh, now Quake 2 is out. Why don't you do it in Quake 2 instead? Oh, now use Quake 3. Oh, now use Doom 3. Oh, now use Unreal whatever."
The Duke Nukem.
I can't count the number of times that people have said, "Why aren't you using another engine? Why aren't you doing this?" One of my roommates tells me you should be updating it to use, this, that, or the other engine. And
you never get anything done.
No. If we keep pointing to new engines, nothing's going to happen.
I mean, the amount
So-
of work it would take
Forever?
to move the project over to something like Unity would be unfathomable at this point, I think.
So it's that. So it sounds like it's that familiarity with the software, with the tools, with all of the flexibility of really an engine that is. Oh geez, when did Doom 2 come out? I mean, mid 90s. We're talking almost now like
1994.
1994. So we're almost 25 years into having this code sort of out there for everybody to experiment with. And I mean, SRB2 has really been one of the forefront projects to really, demonstrate, the capabilities of it. So it sounds like it's consistency, but it's still flexibility. And you guys are adding new features, with each passing version. But I mean, those versions can also be, months, sometimes, years at a time. I think the joke was, version 2 of SRB2 didn't come out until like 2009, but you guys were obviously still working on it. Is it a matter of you really want to take your time and get it right and really not want to rush anything that may not maybe make sense?
That's absolutely a part of it. Another part is sometimes just things happen. Like you saw the anniversary video. There's slopes everywhere. Slopes are a relatively new feature. They're in 2.1 code supported, but our levels clearly don't use that. And they were introduced 2 years ago. We had to redesign every single stage in order to support them properly. I mean, stuff like that will happen between every major version, and it eats up a lot of time. We were very close to getting 2.2 out 2 years ago. We had one level to finish and some bosses to tweak, and we were good. And we then had to revisit everything.
Yeah, I warned you guys, if you add slopes, it's going to change the whole thing.
Oh, we knew once they came out. There was no walking back from that. But I think that the video speaks to the value of the slopes, and I think ultimately it's worth it.
I'm actually glad that you brought up slopes because it brings up another rather major nuance that's a big part of sort of the Sonic culture these days in Sonic fan games, and that's the physics. SRB2 was never really one to get the nuances of, the Sonic physics right, and it never really had to. Did you guys ever feel like there was any pressure, in your development process to kind of mimic, what are Sonic's physics in 3D? Now, I guess granted, I mean, at the early onset of development, there really was no gauge of how Sonic would act in 3D, was there?
I'm trying to remember the timeline for when we started developing SRB2 versus.
They announced Sonic Adventure in Japan of August 1988 or 1998, and we started using Doom, I think, October of that same year.
So you had no frame of reference really for 3D Sonic other than video.
Yeah, and we didn't even use that video as a gauge. We didn't try to copy what Sonic Team was doing at the time either. We kind of took whatever we thought felt right.
And that goes now. That really does. Like with the slopes, it wasn't, hey, how does Sega use this, or how did Classic Sonic use it? It's how does this feel natural in our existing game? We're not looking to make it mirror what the classics do. It's the spirit of the game versus the makeup of the game, if that makes sense.
Do you think there's too much really of an emphasis these days on nuances like that?
Having played Sonic Mania versus something like Sonic 4, I think there's certainly a case to be like people did talk about the physics in Sonic Mania and how that made it, and how in Sonic 4 you lose speed when you go down a hill, which is still something that I blink at.
Huh. But I mean, I guess what the point I'm trying to get at is, I mean, you never needed to mimic any sort of things like that to have an enjoyable game and to have it, last. So I think there's that too. When you say, I mean, you are in some respects, SRB2 is its own thing. It is a increasingly rare exception in a landscape where there's a lot of focus on it these days, both officially and not.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I guess you could say we decided to define our own experience rather than imitate anything that was out there official.
Yeah.
And
So-
it's easier that way, really. If you find something that works and people are enjoying it, which clearly people do with Sonic Roboblast 2, all you need to do is keep building on that. You don't need to go back and try and do something that another game did just to try and appease, people's opinions on what something should or shouldn't be. And eventually people will find that they enjoy what you've built for what it is rather than try and compare.
I still find it pretty satisfying playing through the game. I think I go back and play the updates every couple of years now. But yeah, it's always really good to be able to. The game does have its own sense of physics, and it is really satisfying to play as Sonic and absolutely nail a level. Do love that.
And let's talk about something else. The fact that this was one of the earliest fan games, Sonic fan games, however you want to classify it, with a multiplayer component, which is still a rarity in fan games these days. And a community has really been fostered around that alone. The multiplayer, talk about that a little bit and talk about, how it's sort of blossomed over the years. Or, like with most things, have you kept it fairly simple?
AJ, is it safe to say that it started from an evening of being a bit bored and putting firing rings as projectiles?
Yeah, and replacing the Doom Marine sprites with Sonic and running around and just shooting each other up.
So something that simple compelled you to, put multiplayer in the game. That's interesting.
That probably slowed development for the first year or so that we started it too. We were too busy playing rather than actually making something.
It was really good fun. But I guess it rose like a lot of the sort of features we had back then did, and maybe still do to this day. It's people having fun developing video games, and hey, we can just put this feature in the game, right?
I wonder if you guys have played, maybe what are some of your other favorite fan games if you've tried any. I mean, God knows, we're all kind of adults now, and it's probably increasingly hard for us to do it. I wonder if there's any that you guys really like, other than, SRB2.
I mean, personally speaking, it's been forever since I played a Sonic fan game that wasn't Sonic Roboblast 2, at least 15 years. I can't speak for anyone else on that, but I mean, I dab in from time to time. But like you said, it's very difficult because, I mean, God, we have lives now. It's not like before when. I don't have summers on the internet to just go find random things and download them and try them anymore.
Yeah, there's 3 of my 4 daughters' pictures right up there on the wall.
Oh my goodness!
They keep me plenty busy.
But AJ, I know you have developed other games, since SRB2, and I wonder if you want to talk a little bit more about how the experience of, being one of the leads on SRB2 kind of helped in that respect.
Well, with the games that I ended up making afterwards, it was pretty much just a 2-person, sometimes 3-person team, sometimes involving people that have also contributed to SRB2 in the past. And I think a lot of the project management stuff carries over, and I thought that was really valuable, and I've actually been able to use that in a professional setting too. So it makes me feel like the time that I spent was really valuable.
I wonder your thoughts about projects like Freedom Planet, which actually bore out of a Sonic fan game and turned into sort of its own thing. That's becoming an increasing theme with these projects. Another one that I can remember is one called Sonic Fan Remix, which was basically a 1-level demo of Chemical Plant. And now the developer, basically sold a second project, a racing game, to a developer, although it hasn't come out yet. I'm waiting for it to. I think it's 90 Super GP. That's the current name. How effective of an avenue is fan gaming for those who want to turn pro, do you think?
I think it's an effective education tool, but I don't think it's effective as, hey, I could create something and then somehow put my own spin on it and then it becomes my own thing.
I was just going to say...
Go ahead, Johnny. Actually, Johnny's worked in game design for several major companies, so he probably has more input on this than any of us here.
Johnny, where have you been lately with that?
So I did actually end up becoming a games designer at a couple of companies. So I worked for Codemasters for a bit, and then moved to a smaller indie studio called Pixel Toys, doing some mobile games for them. And I was able to cite the work I'd done on SRB2. I sort of kept SRB1 under the radar for fairly obvious reasons. But not even then necessarily, because that showed, hey, look, I can prove I've been interested in this for a long time, and it did build up a good portfolio of work, and I was able to say, yes, I have worked with programmers before even doing it professionally. So it was really helpful for getting my 2 jobs in the games industry.
And we've seen so many. Go, make fan games and kind of go pro. And, the biggest one, of course, is Taxman and Stealth with Sonic Mania. Just for curiosity's sake, since it is sort of the most glaring example, I mean, what are your thoughts of Sonic Mania and that process of going from fan gaming to pro?
I think it's the best thing Sega did in years.
Yeah, I mean, Sega doesn't. I mean, my own personal opinion, they have not an understanding of what they want to do with Sonic. They are just kind of, throwing titles out there for the sake of cash grabs, and they don't have a direction. They keep trying to come up with new gimmicks and new stuff to try and appeal to, older audiences, and it's like they've stopped making, quality games and just keep trying to be weirdly innovative. It's like the people who love the games are the people who are now making the games that they love, and Sega's not doing that. So for Sega to be hiring Taxman and stuff, this is probably a great thing. And probably they should be looking to bring in more people from, those parts of the community to start helping develop those games, because that's what's gonna save the series. It's what most fans want, is what Taxman and Stealth have made.
I wonder, and this is a question for anybody who wants to field it, if any of you got a call from Sega and said, hey, we want your input on the next Sonic project, whether it's 2D, whether it's 3D, whether it's anything like that, would any of you accept?
I could safely say I would not accept. I do this personally as a hobby. I enjoy the little game that I'm helping develop. I've fallen in love with it. I don't want to be a game developer for the rest of my life. And I don't want to speak for anyone, but I know that there are other people on the development team who feel the same way.
AJ, you were shaking your head too. You wouldn't have that. You wouldn't take that opportunity if you were given it.
Well, the game industry can be really tough. It's either a feast or famine type of environment, and it's really hard. Especially if you have a family that you're trying to support, and you already have. I went into business software development. There's so much more opportunity there than trying to make a game and hoping that, you hit the lottery and everybody loves it and plays it. And just where I am at now in my life, it's just not an opportunity that I would take to drop everything and go help them with what could potentially be something good or something not so good.
Logan, you have been eerily silent. I wonder if you have any thoughts about this.
No, I would not accept their offer.
But he ported to Linux.
Stress. I already have a job. I have a hobby. They're both programming. No.
Look, and I think that's completely understandable. I mean, if you like what you're doing, why complicate it, I suppose. I totally get it. this is a hobby for all of you, and it's one that has endured really the test of time. Almost everybody I'm talking to here has sort of seen the Sonic community evolve, and seen its ups and downs as, new games have come out, as new controversies have come out. Just kind of a general question. Devolve. Well, that's interesting you say that, AJ, because my next question would be, for all of you, how do you think the Sonic community has endured in the past 20 years? Do you think it's gotten better? Do you think it's gotten worse? I kind of wonder your thoughts on all of that.
I think it's gotten worse. And, I'll leave it at that. I have an idea of about when it got worse, but maybe other people here have some more input.
I don't keep a strong pulse on the Sonic community as a whole, but I would definitely have to agree with AJ on this one. I don't think it's gotten better, and quite frankly, I don't see it getting better. There's a lot of toxic environments, and there's people. I'm not going to get further into it than that. There's toxic environments out there, and I like to stay in my little corner of the internet, making my little game relatively isolated from everyone else, and try to avoid most of it.
I would even say that probably most of the people working on SRB2 now are not so much fans of Sonic, but rather they're fans of the game itself.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I wonder if you can kind of sort of mark that difference between being a Sonic fan and an SRB2 fan, and somebody who's sort of dedicated to the craft of the game versus, because I kind of wondered, do you get interest from folks who just really don't care about Sonic at all? Yes, actually. I'm not going to speak to anyone in the community, but I definitely know some people in real life who I've introduced the game to, because I like to use them as, testing for stuff, they've never experienced before, new player experience, all that jazz. And they fall in love with it. And they've never played, the original game. They've never played, the original games. They've been mad about Sonic, but they told me they like this game. So there is definitely an appeal to people who aren't Sonic fans for Sonic Robo Blast 2. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but it's there. We had so much to talk about with the team that we had to split our interview up into 2 parts. So you can see part 2 in our normal time slot for the final. That'll be starting next Saturday, March 24th. And that'll be at 10:30 Eastern. It gets a lot more fun and a lot more festive, because if you don't remember, Johnny and AJ are actually TSSZ alum, and when we used to do radio instead of video, they would fill in for me on the news sometimes, and they did some really interesting things. So we reminisce on that, but that is next Saturday.